right now, somewhere in the world, there are thousands of men sitting in the quiet corner of their own homes, wondering how everything went wrong. Men who are on the edge of divorce. Men who feel invisible in their own marriages. Men who wake up next to someone yet feel completely alone. They never imagined life would turn out like this. Here's what most people never admit. These men didn't end up here because their marriage failed. They ended up here because the version of marriage they believed in never existed in the first place. They were told a simple story growing up. Find the right person, settle down, and life will naturally fall into place. But real life is not a fairy tale. And Nietzsche understood this better than anyone. He believed most people don't marry for love. They marry for escape. Escape from loneliness. Escape from uncertainty. Escape from confronting who they really are. And that's where the tragedy begins. By the end of this video, you'll never see marriage the same way again. You will finally understand why so many men feel trapped in marriages that look normal on the outside, but are empty inside. You'll uncover the hidden pattern that destroys a man long before the divorce papers ever show up. You'll see the truth Nietzsche tried to warn men about. A truth that can either break you or set you free. A man can walk into marriage with good intentions, loyalty, and effort, and still lose everything, not because he didn't try, but because he entered the relationship as someone who needed love instead of someone who already had a grounded identity. When a man expects marriage to give him structure, comfort, consistency, or emotional meaning, he unknowingly places his entire sense of self in someone else's hands. Over time, that dependence turns into resentment from both sides. She feels the weight of being responsible for his emotional world. He feels the pressure of failing to meet expectations no one warned him about. Nietzsche believed that the real crisis isn't the loss of love. It's the loss of respect. A woman may still care about her husband, but respect fades the moment he stops showing direction, purpose, or emotional independence. And once respect is gone, the relationship becomes something worse than unhappy. It becomes hollow. This is why so many men wake up feeling like strangers in their own homes. Not because their partner changed, but because they slowly became someone they never intended to be. A man living a life built on fear instead of self-awareness. Society told them marriage was a milestone. Nietzsche said it was a mirror. And most men don't like what they see in it. The harsh truth is this. A marriage built on the fear of being alone will eventually make you feel more alone than being single ever could. Picture this. A man comes home after a long day, expecting care, comfort, or even just a calm conversation with his partner. But instead, he's met with constant criticism and subtle complaints that makes the house feel heavy, cold, and empty. She's there, he's there, but the connection is gone. No explosive fight, just endless small frustrations that pile up quietly. He sits down and realizes he feels completely alone in the place he thought would always be safe. The comfort he needed has been replaced with cooking, cleaning, and taking care of the kids. He's now doing responsibilities he never imagined he would have to handle, while his so-called partner scrolls endlessly through Instagram like nothing is wrong. This didn't happen overnight. There was no dramatic betrayal or sudden fight. It was the slow, invisible erosion of connection, the shift from excitement to routine, from choosing each other to simply existing together. What was once effortless now feels like effort. What once sparked life now barely holds attention. Nietzsche warned that love thrives on growth, challenge, and individuality. But marriage often replaces all three with predictability and comfort. And comfort quietly erodes desire, respect, and attraction. The man at the table doesn't realize it yet, but he has stopped being the version of himself that made the relationship feel alive. He gave too much, compromised too easily, and lost his own sense of purpose in the process. She, in turn, senses the absence of drive, ambition, and direction, the qualities that once made him compelling. Love doesn't die suddenly. It evaporates when the dynamic that created it disappears. Here's the harsh truth most people never admit. Marriage doesn't destroy love. Routine destroys effort, and effort is what keeps love alive. Affection before marriage is chosen. Affection after marriage is expected. When love feels guaranteed, people stop showing up for it. They stop earning it. And without effort, the spark that once drew them together slowly fades. Nietzsche understood this centuries ago. He knew love is not enough if it's built on dependence, fear, or habit. A man who enters a marriage hoping to find himself instead discovers his emptiness reflected back. A man who expects marriage to give stability, purpose, or meaning will soon realize those things cannot be borrowed from someone else. They must exist within him first. The tragedy is subtle but devastating. Men wake up in homes that look normal, with partners who are present, but they feel invisible. They feel unseen. By the time they notice, they've already given away pieces of themselves they can never get back. Nietzsche would call this the danger of entering marriage without clarity, identity, and self-possession. Because love alone cannot protect a man from losing himself. Next, let's uncover the real reason many women lose respect for their husbands, and why a man can become invisible in his own home without even realizing it. Somewhere along the way, without any dramatic moment to mark it, something shifts. The man who once felt like a priority begins to feel like a background character in his own home. Not because he stopped loving her, but because he slowly stopped being himself. This is the part most men never see coming. Respect doesn't disappear in an explosion. It fades in silence. It fades the moment a man trades his ambition for comfort. It fades when he stops leading his own life and starts reacting to hers. It fades every time he avoids a difficult conversation just to keep the peace. Women may not say it out loud, but they feel it instantly. The moment a man begins living small. Nietzsche warned that a relationship built on dependence will always collapse, because dependency turns a man into something he was never meant to be. Predictable, passive, easy to control. And nothing kills respect faster than predictability. A woman might stay with a man she no longer respects, but she will never look at him the same way. She won't admire him. She won't desire him. She won't follow his lead. Instead, she fills the emotional gap with distractions, social media, friends, validation from outside, while he tries harder and harder to fix something she stopped valuing long ago. Here's the brutal pattern. The more a man chases her approval, the more she withdraws. The more he sacrifices his identity, the more she loses interest. The more he tries to prove he's good enough, the more she sees him as weak. Respect is not taken, it is created. But once lost, it is almost impossible to regain. And Nietzsche's dark truth becomes clear. A woman cannot respect a man who abandons his own path, even if she once loved him. Because love may begin with emotion, but respect is sustained by strength, direction, and self-possession. If a man doesn't protect his identity, his purpose, and his inner fire, he becomes invisible in the very home he built. He becomes a helper, a provider, a background presence, everything except the man she once admired. And here's the twist most men never realize. She doesn't resent him for failing her. She resents him for failing himself. Next, uncover the quiet turning point where a woman emotionally checks out long before the breakup, long before the distance, long before the man realizes anything is wrong. Before we continue, if this has opened your eyes even a little, make sure you subscribe. Not for me, but because the truth in the next parts may be the very thing that saves you from becoming another silent statistic. Here's something most men never talk about, not because they're hiding it, but because they don't even notice when it happens. There's a moment in every failing marriage where the woman emotionally checks out. Not because of one big fight, not because of something dramatic, but because of something much quieter. She no longer sees the man she once chose. It starts in tiny ways. She stops asking how his day was. She stops sharing what's on her mind. She stops caring about the small things he used to do that once meant everything. On the surface, life looks normal. Bills are paid, routines continue, conversations still happen, but all of it feels transactional, like two people running a household instead of two people living a life. And if you ask her what's wrong, she'll say, "I'm fine." Not because she's lying, but because in her mind, the relationship already ended. She's just waiting for the rest of the story to catch up. Nietzsche pointed at this without mercy. The emotional death happens long before the physical breakup. And when a woman reaches that point, she doesn't argue harder. She argues less. She doesn't demand effort. She stops expecting it. She doesn't try to fix the relationship. She quietly detaches from it. This is the part that shocks men the most, because men think relationships die with a fight. They don't. They die with indifference. And here's the harsh truth. When she checked out emotionally, it wasn't because she stopped loving him. It was because she stopped recognizing him. She fell in love with the man who had direction, passion, confidence, identity. She didn't fall in love with the man who abandoned all of that just to keep things smooth. A woman doesn't leave when she's unhappy. She leaves when she no longer respects the man she's with. And that loss of respect happens silently, quietly, over years of small disappointments he never noticed. So while he's still telling himself, "We're fine," she's already imagining a life where she feels alive again. And if the man doesn't wake up early enough to this shift, he ends up blindsided by a truth that was always in front of him. Let's now talk about the final stage. The moment a man realizes he must rebuild himself, not to win her back, but to save his own life. The stage Nietzsche believed separated broken men from reborn men. Stay with me. There comes a moment, sometimes suddenly, sometimes quietly, when a man looks at his life and realizes something difficult but necessary. The problem was never just the marriage. The problem was who he became inside it. It's the moment he wakes up and feels a weight that has nothing to do with bills, responsibilities, or arguments. It's the weight of knowing he abandoned too many parts of himself. Dreams he postponed, boundaries he ignored, values he compromised. A silent exhaustion rooted in years of giving more than he ever received. This is the crossroads Nietzsche talked about. The point where a man stops asking, "What happened to us?" and finally asks, "What happened to me?" And here's the honest truth. Most men reach this point alone, not because no one cares, but because men are trained to carry things quietly. They're taught to endure, to hold the house together, to be the emotional anchor even while they are crumbling inside. Society praises a man who sacrifices everything for others, but it rarely asks how much of himself he has left. This is why Nietzsche believed a man must confront his own life with brutal honesty, not to blame himself, but to understand himself, to see how easily a man can drift into a life he never consciously chose. Maybe you recognize some of these patterns. He stopped pursuing personal goals because he didn't want to create problems. He stopped expressing his feelings because it only led to conflict. He stopped being curious, bold, driven, because routine made everything predictable. He stopped respecting himself, thinking that sacrificing more would somehow restore harmony. But here's the twist Nietzsche would insist on. A man cannot revive a relationship until he revives himself. And revival doesn't start with the marriage. It starts with the mirror. Because at some point, a man realizes the truth most people avoid. No one is coming to save him. No partner, no family member, no friend. And ironically, this realization, the one that feels the most painful, is the same moment his rebirth finally begins. The rebirth starts with small, quiet decisions. He starts honoring his boundaries again. He begins pursuing the goals he abandoned. He speaks up, not aggressively, but firmly. He takes care of himself, mentally, physically, spiritually, because he understands that strength is not optional. It is essential. He stops apologizing for wanting a meaningful life. And slowly, he becomes a man again. Not the version shaped by fear or comfort, but the version shaped by purpose. When a man rebuilds himself, something powerful happens. He becomes someone he respects. And that is the turning point. Because when a man respects himself, others feel it. They respond to it. They mirror it. Even his partner, whether she stays or not, begins seeing him differently because he moves differently, with direction instead of doubt. Nietzsche believed the tragedy isn't that men lose themselves. It's that they don't realize they've lost themselves until everything around them starts collapsing. But the moment they understand this, the collapse becomes a doorway into a life built on self-awareness instead of avoidance. A life where a man chooses his path instead of drifting into one. A life where love, if it appears, is a choice, not a lifeline. And here's the part no one tells men. Rebuilding yourself isn't about winning her back. It's about winning yourself back. Because a man who rediscovers who he is becomes stronger. Whether the marriage survives or not, he becomes clearer, calmer, harder to manipulate, harder to ignore. He becomes someone capable of real connection, not one built on fear, obligation, or emotional dependence. And most importantly, he becomes someone who cannot be destroyed by silence, distance, or routine, because he finally knows who he is without anyone else. This is Nietzsche's final message to men. Marriage can support a strong man, but it cannot create one. If you enter it without identity, without purpose, without self-respect, you'll lose yourself. But if you rebuild from within, no situation, married or single, can break you again. And that's the truth most men never hear until it's too late. If you're still here, it's because this speaks to you. So subscribe and stays here. Thank you